Hello, my beautiful friends and book lovers. I hope that you're all doing well. If you watched my February and March wrap up, I'll link it up here for you. Combined the 2 months. I said that I was going to be dedicating a full video review for The Push by Audrain, who, by the way, I was just looking at the page count of this book. Like, how freaking pretty is she? Stunning. Anyways, I have so much to say. This book is 303 pages long. It is a book of the month book. And I had a couple extra credits. And I was like, you know what? I've kind of been struggling in regards to like not finding a lot of like 4 or 5 star thrillers so far in 2023. And I was getting a little discouraged. Then I was like, let me buy a book that I know has a lot of hype, because then maybe it'll kind of get me out of this like thriller reading slump that I'm in. And this succeeded. Oh, I don't even know where to begin. Let me just go ahead and read this inside synopsis book description for you. If you don't want to hear that, then just skip ahead and you'll know when I'm done reading it, because I will be looking up and not down. Here we go. It says, a tense, page-turning psychological drama about the making and breaking of a family and a woman whose experience of motherhood is nothing at all like what she hoped for and everything she feared. Blythe Connor is determined that she will be the warm, comforting mother to her new baby, Violet, that she herself never had. But in the thick of motherhood's exhausting early days, Blythe becomes convinced that something is wrong with her daughter. She doesn't behave like most children do. Or is it all in Blythe's head? Her husband Fox says she's imagining things. The more Fox dismisses her fears, the more Blythe begins to question her own sanity, and the more we begin to question what Blythe is telling us about her life as well. Then their son Sam is born, and with him, Blythe has the blissful connection she'd always imagined with her child. Even Violet seems to love her little brother, but when life as they know it is changed in an instant, the devastating fallout forces Blythe to face the truth. The Push is a tour de force you will read in a sitting, an utterly immersive novel that will change everything you think you know about motherhood, about what we owe our children, and about what it feels like when women are not believed. Okay, so I've been putting this off, honestly, for so long. Sorry, I'm scrolling down on my notes really quick. Because of basically what I just said. Like, it's a postpartum-y book. And those books are hard to read. Postpartum itself is like hard enough to navigate. So even thinking about it not being like a mentally enjoyable experience, like with a lot of negative connotations going on, like, don't get me wrong, I was so tired. All of my postpartum journey, I was so tired. Like, my husband and I were just talking about this the other day. I was like, remember those like little highs that I would get when I would get more than like 4 hours of sleep? Like sleep just becomes a gift. But it's also like, for me, it took me forever to fall asleep, like in all of my postpartum, just like the hormones and the worries and everything. So like just thinking about that part of like the pregnancy and motherhood journey, like it was tough, right? But I was like, I don't want to read a book where it's like more than just like sleep deprivation, like all these like crazy like negative thoughts and stuff. Like that kind of stuff freaks me out. Like, give me a serial killer any day, like that kind of story. But when it's something like this, I'm like, I don't know. And then this book also came out when I was pregnant with my son. So I was like, I'm not reading it then. I'm sure as shit not reading it during postpartum. And then now that my son is almost 2, I was like, you know what? I'll read it. But thank God I waited. Like, honestly, I've talked to actually a couple of friends that I've made through Instagram about this book. And a lot of them have the same view. Like, I don't want to read it. Like, I don't like postpartum stuff, but like I heard it's super good. And I was telling them after I read it, I'm like, you know what? Good. Like, you do you. Do not read it if you feel like it's really going to be upsetting, because it is heavy postpartum, like just mental kind of like, you're basically reading a psychological thriller but it like hits home, I think, for more people because it's like taking place in like the postpartum setting. So anyways, do not read this book if you know that that's going to be upsetting for you. Like, my son's a little older now. I'm not in postpartum anymore. Like, I read it, but I was still like disturbed after reading it. And I will say there are some very like vivid and descriptive scenes in this book that were like, I was not expecting, and like they're still like in my brain, and I'm like, just get out of my brain. Like, so yeah. That's all of like my warnings, okay? Because it's definitely a psychological thriller. You're like, what is happening? Who can I believe? This is also funny. I said this in my wrap up, but like on my rating scale that I use for all of my books and all of my videos, I am giving it an enjoyable read, but the adjective enjoyable sounds funny when describing this book because it's like, it's enjoyable if you like psychological thrillers, but the content is like not enjoyable. Does that make sense? My hands are so dry, but I'm too lazy to stand up and go put lotion on. Like, they're literally like, it's not really picking up, but they're dry. Maybe it is picking up. You're like, holy shit. Okay, so that's basically all I'm gonna say in regards to non-spoiler parts, because I feel like I pretty much said everything I wanted to say. Like, I warned you guys, if you're anything like me, maybe like hold on. Like, either not read it or read it at a time in your life where you know it's not gonna like drastically upset you. But that's it for the non-spoiler section. So if you're new here, I typically always the second part of the video contains spoilers. So that's what we're going into now. But I would love if you would check out some more of my videos or even hit that subscribe button so you're here for future bookish videos. But we are going to get chatting with spoilers. I'm going to be looking a lot at my notes. Okay, so Blythe. Blythe is her name. I have the like worst memory, but also the worst like short-term memory. Like, I literally just finished reading Look Closer by David Ellis, listening actually, and like I'm blanking on almost everyone's name. So I don't know. Anyways, Blythe, our main character. This is a pretty large paragraph I wrote, so I'm just gonna read directly from it. I said, I'm torn because it feels like with the past point of views from Blythe's family, she feels like her family just almost kind of has this curse of sorts. Like, they all had other things going on in their lives, like new marriages. One of them was getting a new job in the past, like a new life route, if you will. And then they would end up getting pregnant. And then they almost kind of like, it seemed to me, they didn't want the pregnancy because they had like other things going on in their lives. And then they kind of started to have that almost like disattachment, if you will, because it just wasn't happening for them. Like, if you really think back to that, I think it was the first past point of view with one of her relatives. She was getting married, like she found a guy she liked, but then she ended up falling pregnant, and then they like moved home, and then that guy was like working on the farm, whatever. So that's how I think of it, okay? And then like it kind of just became this repetitive cycle where like the women were almost at parts of their lives where they weren't quite ready, nor did they want a pregnancy. However, but in our main character's point of view, Blythe, like her and Fox did want a baby. They were trying for a baby. But then like, as you're reading the book, you're like, okay, so she has this idea in her head where like, I think her mother said something to her like, Blythe, you know, not all, like, you're going to learn about the women in this family or whatever, like kind of already setting her up for like failure in a sense, like setting her up like, you know, we're all this way, so like you're going to be this way kind of thing. So then like, you know, she gives birth to Violet, and then immediately she's like, I could tell from the beginning that things weren't right. So that's where like as a reader, I was like intrigued. I'm like, oh shit, like are things really not right? Like, is something wrong with Violet? Which obviously, you know, most likely that's the case based off the ending. Some might call that open-ended. Yeah, I don't know. I thought that ending, I'm getting a little ahead of myself. What was that girl's name? The stepmom. Gemma? Yeah, Gemma. She says, Blythe, she finally whispers something happened to Jet. So I think as the reader, you're supposed to infer that Violet indeed did do something to Jet, like the whole time Blythe thought that she did to Sam. Remember how she feels like she saw her push Sam in the stroller? Oh my God, that was like such a hard scene to read. But then I was like, okay, so is it like, was it a postpartum thing for her? Or was it really like the whole like curse of her family that she kind of believes? But then I was like, no, not really, because the second baby, Sam, came and she was like, oh my gosh, he's everything I wanted and more. So it's not like, she was like that with both of her babies, which I thought was interesting. But now that I'm actually saying this out loud, I feel like all of the other past point of views, like I think all of those women stopped after having like the first baby, which might make sense because some of those pregnancies seemed like they weren't planned, especially with the ones who were trying to go like on a different like route of life, if you will. So she's the only one, I think, in her family that had more than one kid. So that's just some food for thought. Also, thinking of that ending scene too. Sorry, I'm getting a little like congested right now. I wrote open ending. Well, I kind of just talked about how I feel like for me, it wasn't an open ending, but I could see how like a lot of people would think that it was an open ending. Or might feel that way because it kind of is in a sense. But like, I guess when I was reading it, I always felt something was like off with Violet for sure. So I never once really was like dead set on Blythe. Like I thought, I mean, she clearly had some stuff going on, but like I was like, I don't know, words. All right, so I definitely inferred that it was Violet because why else would Gemma call her? That was a big thing for me. Like her and Gemma weren't friends anymore. Gemma found out that she was like impersonating being another person, another woman at that like mom's group, and then she was just turned off by her, right? So like why else would she call her if something happened to Jet that wasn't done by Violet? Does that make sense? Like she would only call her to tell her if something happened to Jet if she thinks Violet did something, because you got to remember they weren't friends anymore. That's about it, guys. I mean, like I said, it was kind of hard to read. But overall, like I thought it was really well done. I love a good like psychological thriller, an unreliable narrator, main POV. But yeah, let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I know so many of you have read this book, so yeah, I'm excited to chat about it with you. But as always, thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye, you guys.